He goes, I want you to become a recognized leader in digital customer experience. I'm like, that's it? He said, yeah, that's your entire personal development plan. How do I become a recognized leader? He said, I want you to go out there and I want you to go talk at conferences and tell everybody about all the cool stuff that we're doing. And I'm like, okay. I started looking for all sorts of industry conferences, eventually got asked to do presentations. 2019, when I left corporate America to start my own speaking business, I had probably already done 100 speeches. I was actually pretty established. I just had done it as a corporate person, because when you have those logos on your business card, lots of people want you to come speak. When I got the CSP, the Certified Speaking Professional, he was my first call. I left him a voicemail and I said, you did this. Because if you had not gotten me out there on the speaking circuit, I would not be a certified speaking professional today, nor would I be in customer experience.
That is amazing. What a great story.
We are at the nexus of something greater. This is our story about building a remote-only company that spans the entire globe. This is the future of business, technology, and global remote work. You are watching Discovering the Possible.
Ladies and gentlemen, today my guest is none other than Dan Gingiss, a good friend of mine and a customer experience expert with one mission: to help businesses create remarkable customer experience strategies that drive loyal, word-of-mouth marketing, and, of course, revenue. I've known Dan for decades now, and after graduating from business school with me, he went on to spend 2 decades with leading marketing and CX teams at companies like Discover, McDonald's, and Humana. Dan knows exactly how to turn everyday interactions into unforgettable moments. That's why he's a good friend of mine. He makes every moment exciting to keep customers coming back for more. Dan has been recognized as a certified public speaker, which we're going to talk about in a minute. One of my favorite ways to talk to Dan when Dan's not around is to read his book.
Yeah.
Experience Maker. So I'd like to welcome to the show my friend and your experience maker, Dan Gingiss. Dan, thanks for being with us today.
Chris Nolte, it is an absolute pleasure. You are one of my favorite people, and I'm so glad to know you. And I can't believe it has been 2 decades. Both of us, I think, had hair when we were in business school.
That is true. That is true. Eventually I gave it up, but yes.
I did too, and, but we look better this way, I'm convinced.
I was thinking I always wanted to be bald when I had hair. Like, I want to shave it off, and nature took care of that decision. So
yeah,
lovely.
sometimes the universe just makes the decision for us.
And that's exactly right. Well, listen, we got to know each other at business school, and I think it's important to start there because that's where this relationship began, and that is singing.
Everybody goes to business school to join a men's a cappella group, right? I mean,
right. Well,
it's just very typical.
It was a void in my life, and I wanted to fill it right then and there. Favorite solo of mine, I think it was, what was it called? Uka Chaka, right? That song.
I'm feeling.
Yeah. How about I'm feeling? So if anyone sees Dan in the street, let's just you should prompt him to start riffing on that song because he does an excellent solo.
And Chris was our star percussionist for most of the time, which was great. So there are lots of different noises that can come out of his mouth.
Discovering the Possible is presented by Kayana. Visit hirekayana.com right now to hire the top 1% Filipino professionals smarter and faster. That's hirekayana.com.
Let's dive into your background in customer experience. I don't think you would identify as a customer experience expert when you were in business school.
No.
Where did this all happen? How does this come to being? How did you sort of realize your calling?
When I was an undergraduate, I didn't know what I wanted to do then either. And I spent a lot of time on the student newspaper. So I became an editor, And I knew that that was a skill that I liked and was good at, but none of that added up to a job as far as I could tell. So I ended up in a job that was in direct marketing. And I had literally never taken a marketing class. And so I spent 4 years in this job before I went to business school. And what I realized in that job is that marketing actually is psychology plus communications. I had somehow stumbled into exactly what was right for me, given what I had studied. So I went to business school in part to get the formalized marketing education that I never had. I learned really, the ins and outs of marketing. And when I was at Discover, one of the things that I loved is they build generalists. It's just a philosophy. They want people to know a lot about the business. And so if you're in any role for 2 years or more at Discover, you are ancient. So we move around a lot. In 10 years at Discover, I had 5 different roles. And so my last role, I was recruited into it by the chief digital officer. And he called me one day. He said, I got this great role for you. It's the head of digital customer experience and social media. I said, okay, interesting. You are aware of the fact that I've never done digital customer experience or social media, right? And he said, yes, I'm aware of that. And I said, oh, awesome. So why do you want me for this role? And he said something to me, Chris, that totally changed my career. He said, I've been watching you in business meetings, and you have this innate ability to wear the customer's hat and to always look at business problems through the lens of the customer. Remember, this is 2012. He said, we need to start doing that in the digital space because digital is going to become the customer experience, and we need to be thinking that way. And that's why I want you on this team. I was like, wow, dang, this guy knows me better than I know me.
By the way, best managers, when you're working with someone who knows you better than you know yourself, like that's a dream. So you had this experience and he put you on the right path, basically.
Not only did he put me on the right path because I fell in love with that job, but once I got there, we had to write a personal development plan or something. I'm like, oh, God, I don't want to do this. So I'm like, what do I write on this stuff? And he goes, Gingiss, your personal development plan is easy. I'm like, awesome. Okay. I'm like, what is it? He goes, I want you to become a recognized leader in digital customer experience. I'm like, that's it? He said, yeah, that's your entire personal development plan. I said, great. How do I become a recognized leader? And he says, and think about how meaningful this was. He said, I want you to go out there and I want you to go talk at conferences and tell everybody about all the cool stuff that we're doing at Discover. And I'm like, okay, how do I do that? And he's like, figure it out, Gingiss. And so I did. And I started looking for all sorts of industry conferences. And I remember I begged my way onto a panel and I was so excited because it was on my first panel. Then I would serve on a bunch of panels. And eventually I got, I was being asked to be on panels. Then I begged my way to my first solo presentation. And then eventually got asked to do presentations. And so what's fascinating is by the time years later, 2019, when I left corporate America to start my own speaking business, I had probably already done 100 speeches. I was actually pretty well established. I just had done it as a corporate person, because when you have those logos on your business card, lots of people want you to come speak, particularly because they don't have to pay you. Right. And so when I got, you mentioned before, the CSP, the Certified Speaking Professional, he was my first call. I left him a voicemail and I said, you did this because if you had not gotten me out there on the speaking circuit, I would not be a certified speaking professional today, nor would I be in customer experience.
That is amazing. What a great story. I think we all hope to have people like that in our lives, where you get, pushed in one way or another because someone sees something in you. And obviously, interestingly enough, this is third party recognition that you're in the right place. That's amazing.
And, another thing that he did, which I think is very relevant to the work that you do, Chris, is he was the rare boss that understood his own weaknesses. And that was the other reason that he hired me. So this guy was great at a lot of things and is a great visionary. He was able to see years in advance. I found him to be one of my favorite bosses, even though he and I were very, very different. I always used to say I was the yin to his yang, like we're very complementary. And he was smart enough to know that I filled his weakness. And I got the team really excited and engaged and, working hard and productive. And so I've always kept that in mind, that as I'm hiring people, I want to find people that are good at things that I'm not good at, because if you just hire people that have the same skills as you, then you double down on that skill, but you're still missing the holes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's especially true when you're an entrepreneur and you're starting a company. Like, you don't have the safety net of a pool of skills and capital and what have you. You have to make sure whoever your partners are, your operating team is, that they let you do what you do great, like well. And, the interesting thing, and I've learned this myself, like, if I focus on the things that I'm good at, it takes the least amount of energy and I can do it forever.
Of course.
If you give me the things I'm terrible at, it just sucks the life out of me and I'm exhausted.
And I would add, there's good at and also passionate about. Because when I'm working on the stuff I'm passionate about, it does not feel like work. It's not arduous. It's fun. I'm jazzed up because it's something that I really like doing. And to be honest, one of the things I'm trying to work on is making that kind of work a bigger percentage of my time. Because I know if I can focus on the stuff I'm passionate about, I can move mountains. Problem is, as entrepreneurs, when we feel like we have to do everything ourselves, or we just get lost in the weeds or whatever, we end up spending a lot of time on stuff that we're not passionate about. And so therefore, the word product isn't as good.
You mentioned something about people and understanding people and being a good manager. Creating a good customer experience is all about having the right people in the right spots, right? In that, just like your boss knew that you should be out front because you had a customer sensibility. Is that a critical part of creating a customer experience for someone? Is that the first thing you would look for in creating a great customer experience? And what would you tell, I guess, leaders of companies where they should start on the human resources side of customer experience? Where does that begin and end, I guess?
So one of the questions that I pose in my book is, do we want a separate department for customer experience that is led by a chief customer officer or a chief experience officer? Or do we want customer experience to be everybody's job? And my answer is yes.
Good answer.
We want both of those things. We want both of those things. So let me explain why. Yeah. So we need a dedicated team because we need people who are focused on it, and we need people who can view the customer journey from the 30,000-foot view. Because if you think about any relationship that you have with any brand, there are so many touch points that you have with that brand. And somebody has to be able to see all of those touch points, because the reality is, as companies get bigger, they get siloed. And so those touch points are often managed by completely different areas of the company. And from a consumer perspective, we don't care, right? We look at it as it's Marriott. Not that it's the Marriott finance department versus the Marriott custodial department versus the Marriott front desk department. We don't care what department. We just see it as one brand. But internally, we look at it as we've got all these departments. We need somebody who can see it from that high level and put all the pieces together. But we also need to empower every single employee to be customer first in what they are doing. And that means that even if you are somebody, say, in the finance department, and you don't even talk to customers, it is about understanding that the decisions that you make every day impact the customer experience. So For example, maybe in the finance department, your job is to figure out the mechanisms by which people can pay you, both the payment methods and the payment terms. Now you think about, as a business person working with other businesses, the payment terms, that's a pretty important part of the customer experience. Do they need all the money up front? Can I get 30 days to pay? Is it, net 30, net 60, whatever? These things matter, and little adjustments in those could have a big impact on my business as the customer, right? And so the finance guy has got to be thinking about that, because if he's not, then it's too easy to make only a business first decision. And when we make business first decisions, they might be profitable on the surface, but oftentimes they are so at the expense of our own customers. So think about, for example, an industry that pretty much everybody loves to hate, which is the airline industry. Airlines almost always make decisions that are profit centric and not customer centric. If you'll forgive me for a second, I'm going to dramatize a little bit. So something happened, I believe it was 2002, that right as we were graduating, something changed in the airline industry that had been the same for about 5 decades. And here's how I imagine it went down. We'll say that you are a high-end finance manager. Maybe you're the CFO of a major airline, and I am the young whippersnapper in the finance department who's trying to make a name for himself. And I come up to you and I say, boss, I got a way for us to make billions of dollars. And you're going to be like,
I'm very excited by this, Dan. Right? I love young whippersnappers. Let's go.
Okay. Are you ready for my idea? Remember, this is 2002.
Yes.
My idea is we're going to charge people to check their bags. And you're going to say, but wait, they've been doing it for free for 50 years. And I'm going to say, exactly. And then we're going to start charging people for something that was free for 50 years, and we're going to make billions of dollars off of it. And let me ask you something. Did we provide any additional value to customers? No. Is it any reason why customers hate the airline industry? It's very clear when they hate the industry, right? Because all of the decisions are like that. All of the decisions. Think about the airlines hate skip lagging, right? And skip lagging, for those that don't know, is if you want to go to Phoenix and you're coming from Chicago, oftentimes the flight to Phoenix will cost you $300. But if you take a flight to LA with a stopover in Phoenix, it'll cost you $200. Does that make sense? No, it makes no sense. So what people do is they book that LA flight and then they get off at Phoenix and they just never go to LA. And the airlines hate this, and they're so mad at people for doing it, and they're threatening people and saying they're going to take away their loyalty points and their status. And it's like, hold on a second. The whole reason people are doing this is because your system is set up in such a stupid way. And so that's just another example of not being customer centric. So the short answer is, I believe that every employee has to be trained and empowered to be customer centric. That means we always do right by the customer. We never get in trouble if we are doing something that is right for the customer. And we have to have somebody that can look at the whole journey, the journey as a whole, because so many other employees are stuck in silos.
Awesome. In that journey, in that arc of customer experience, I mean, you kind of rode the wave in a way, because CX was not a thing probably, or just started being a thing a few years before you got into it in a way. People didn't really talk about it in those terms, I suspect.
Yeah, and actually I was able to ride 2 waves, because the first book that I wrote was called Winning at Social Customer Care, and that was in 2017. And that wave was when social media first came out, and I was leading social at Discover at this time. I sort of immediately looked at it differently than everybody else. Everybody was so excited about it as a marketing channel. But what I was seeing, especially very early days Facebook, is that what companies were doing was literally they were just taking their TV commercials and broadcasting them on Facebook. And it's like, listen, people, nobody wanted to see your TV commercial when it was on TV, let alone we don't want to see it when we're on Facebook, right? But companies immediately went to just mega horns, just publishing, all of this marketing stuff. Meanwhile, what was happening is that on the bottom of these posts, since everybody could comment on them, customers were starting to comment and they were starting to use it as a customer service channel. So, Kayana puts a marketing piece out there talking about why it's so great to have a VA. And that reminds me that, Kayana owes me a $50 refund for something. And so I type in, as a comment onto your marketing piece, I'm like, hey, where's my $50, right? And you didn't want that, but that's what happened. And so I became fascinated by social media as a customer engagement channel more than a marketing channel. And the reason this is important is that I believe the reason customer experience came into the lexicon and started to grow big was because of social media. Social media gave customers a public voice for the first time. And so you and I aren't that old, but we are old enough that when we were kids, if you wanted to talk to a brand, you wrote them a letter. But that's how you got in touch with them, right? That was the only way you did it. Now, all of a sudden, you could just go onto Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever and talk to a brand, and they'll talk back to you. So you could establish a relationship with the brands that you loved. And sure enough, when I wrote that book, it was the first book that I know of that focused on customer service in social media instead of marketing in social media. And what happened when customers got a voice is they demanded a better experience. And so that's when customer experience, I believe, started to really grow in popularity.
That reminds me of something that, as you probably remember, the private equity and family office that I was involved in and ran, we bought a restaurant company. And the restaurateur we were working and partnered with was really brilliant, a really smart operator. And he said to me, he goes, the most powerful moment in a restaurateur's day is when the restaurant fails and something fails in the restaurant, and that the general manager or the maitre d' or whoever goes to the table and addresses the issue in what is ultimately a very public way, apologizing and fixing it. And not only does the guest at the table get that experience, but more importantly, everyone sees it. And for social media and the customer experience, when your customers are publicly responding to you, and you can publicly, talking to you, and you can publicly respond, that becomes a thing. Those are high leverage moments. I suspect you've seen some of those moments go wonderfully well and terribly wrong. And I'm curious about your perspectives on that.
Yeah, you're spot on. You're spot on. There's a ton of research that has shown that customers who have had a problem with a brand that is successfully resolved are more loyal than customers that have never had a problem in the first place. And I know that sounds backwards, but I believe the reason for this actually appeared during COVID. So during COVID, we very quickly figured out which companies that we did business with were there for us when the chips were down and which one just ran away, right? Some companies reacted really, really well, and some companies did a terrible job. And my belief is that at our core, we consumers just want to know that companies have our back, that if something goes wrong, they'll be there for us. And when a mistake happens and a company fixes it, they have proven to you that they have your back. And that's why it's so exciting. And that's why you become loyal and you say, okay, now that I know that, I'm never leaving again. Right. Yeah. And the reverse is true too, right? If I have a big problem, I'm about to leave a credit card company because I've experienced fraud over and over and over again on my card. And so they keep replacing the cards. And then all of a sudden what happened is the fraud went away, but the fraud department kept rejecting transactions over and over and over and over again. And I finally called them up. I'm like, if you got to stop doing this. Like the card is working and I can't, like, if I cannot use your credit card, I'm going to have to go somewhere else. And ultimately, what I'm finding is they are not fixing my problem. And so I'm going to end up leaving. So it does work in both directions. And you're absolutely right. The public nature of social media makes it even more critical. And you can have big winners and big losers that way. There's a story that I tell in the book and sometimes in my keynotes. One of my favorite tweets when I was at Discover was just some guy who was being a little bit sarcastic about how much mail that he was getting from us, like actual snail mail. And we responded to him. And what we had taught our agents was that when it was appropriate, they could mimic the tone of the poster. So if the poster's funny, we can be funny, et cetera. And this guy was a little, I guess I will kindly call him cheeky, right? Maybe unkind would be sarcastic, but he was somewhere in that realm. And I remember the first line of the response was something like, wow, we must really want to have you apply, right? Because he was complaining we were sending him too much mail. And this guy wrote us back, and the essence of his response was, I'm going to apply for a card because I loved your response. And so he literally went from being sarcastic about it to being our newest customer. And Chris, this all happened in the span, like 3 back and forths happened in the span of 13 minutes. Because we were not only the most responsive credit card company, we were the fastest responders. And so we turned a criticizer, a detractor, not only into an advocate, but into a customer.
One of the things I love about your book is it makes you realize that customer experience is not reactive. It's actually very intentional and designed. And in the book, you develop the whys, and then we'll leave the last letter out so you can sort of reveal it. But like the whys framework and how to think intentionally about creating great customer experiences. I would love for you to go through that with us if you could for a moment, because I love it. And it affects the way I think about our business. And I don't know if I told you this, at our offsite in the Philippines, our entire team, I did an entire symposium on the book and the framework. It is a part of how we think as a business. You're credited for that, and I appreciate it. But customer experience is it's an intentional activity. So maybe talk about wiser framework and how you are intentional and think intentionally.
Yeah, so the 4 letters of WISE are an acronym, and they are 4 different ways to create what I call remarkable experiences. And the reason I use the word remarkable is remarkable literally means worthy of remark. And so we want to create experiences that people talk about. And that's how you generate word of mouth marketing. And when we say talk about, it could be that they talk about it in social media to millions of followers. That'd be amazing. But in a lot of industries, we don't even need that. We just need them to tell 1 or 2 people about us, right? And that's how our business grows. And I ask almost anybody with clients, if every one of your clients told 2 people about you, what would that do to your business? It'd be pretty amazing, right? So remarkable is sort of the goal. So WISE stands for witty, immersive, shareable, and extraordinary. A witty experience is something that is not about being funny, but is about having fun. And so it is showing personality in your brand. It is showing the humans behind your brand. It is about refusing to be boring. Last night, I'm not making this up, Chris. I redid on my website the terms page, the privacy policy page, and the cookie policy page. And all of them are fun to read. Why? Because that's part of my brand. Because that is what witty is that even when you're reading a legal stuff, even when you're reading legal documents, they might as well be interesting. They might as well be fun to read. And by the way, every time I've shown these to lawyers, they love them because they're still legally sound. They just don't sound dry and boring. And so that's what witty's about. It's about every time we communicate with people in every single channel, there's an opportunity to be witty. There's a restaurant in San Francisco, a breakfast restaurant, that when they bring the bill, they attach it to the tines of a fork. And there's a sign on the bill that says, fork it over. And it's like, you're laughing when you're getting the bill, which is fantastic, right? That's like the bad part of the meal when you have to pay. And they've got you laughing when they're doing it. Brilliant. Immersive is about creating experiences that either appeal to one of the five senses or appeal to someone's emotions. And obviously, if you can do more than one of those at once, it's even better. Because if you think about your best memories, if you think about your childhood memories, chances are they're going to involve one of the five senses. You remember mom's chocolate chip cookies coming out of the oven or something like that. And you're going to remember some emotion that you felt. It could have been happiness, sadness, anger, fear, whatever it is. But this is what memories are made of. And so when we intentionally design experiences that either appeal to emotions or appeal to the senses, we're able to create memorable moments. Shareable is about being very intentional in today's society about this thing and about how we get people to pull it out and take a picture or a video. And again, they might share it on social media. They might share it with just a neighbor or a friend or family colleague, doesn't matter, but we want them to record the moment. And so when we design shareable experiences, it's about literally identifying the moment we want them to share. So one of my favorite examples on this one is the brand Dippin' Dots, which is the ice cream of the future.
Right.
Now, Dippin' Dots had this little issue.
The ice cream of the future.
It is. So Dippin' Dots are so cold that the first bite that you take sticks to your tongue. And some people like that and some people don't like that, but it is a facet of the product. And so Dippin' Dots created a marketing campaign called Taste the Fun. And all they did was post photos on social media of people with Dippin' Dots stuck to their tongue. That's it. And everybody figured it out. Like they figured out, oh, this is the moment. Really? And so even and I've been telling this story for years. The last time I went to Dippin' Dots, I was about to take my first bite. And I was like, oh, hold on a second. I got to get my selfie with it sticking to my tongue. They identified that this was a moment that they wanted people to share. And the beauty of it is they don't even have to tell people to share. It just becomes a natural point at which people want to talk to other people about. And then finally, extraordinary. The definition of extraordinary is just a bit better than ordinary. And the reality is that in most businesses, the vast majority of the experiences are ordinary. They just are. And the thing is that no one shares an ordinary experience. No one shares an average experience. Our millennial friends like to call it meh. My Gen Z kids and your Gen Z kids call it mid. It all means the same thing. It is not remarkable. It is not something that we are going to tell someone about. And so extraordinary is about finding those ordinary moments and just making them a little bit better. You don't have to drastically overhaul them. You don't have to spend a ton of money or technology. You just have to figure out how to make them a slightly different and therefore better. And so those are the 4 steps, and those are how you create remarkable experiences. And then you teased up that there is a 5th step, because not only do I want you to be wise to the power of customer experience, I want you to be wiser than the competition. And the R is about being responsive. And we sort of hit on this already. It is that when customers talk to you, whether it is in person, in social media, via email, on chat, if they're still sending you snail mail, if they're calling you, you need to be there to respond back to them. And this goes for people who are complaining. This goes for people that are complimenting you. And this goes for people that are asking you questions. Because consumers today want a two-way relationship with brands. And so when we want to talk to the brand, we want the brand to talk back to us. And that's being responsive.
Right. And I when I hear you talk this way, I immediately start thinking about like my own business. And I have to imagine as people hear you talk on stage, they're thinking about how they can improve their own businesses or what they can do to tweak it. And you must talk to all sorts of businesses about their customer experience, because where does it begin? Where does it end? I mean, customer experience is the thing, right? I mean, Disney figured this out a long time ago. Right.
So I love to tell this. I know you'll appreciate this. There was a 2 days last October where I had back-to-back speeches in the same city. This doesn't happen as often as I would like it to. It's very convenient when it does. On the first day, I spoke to the Fluid Power Distributors Association. So these are people that run pipelines of gas or water, and they're selling to municipalities or sometimes to businesses.
Wow.
The next day, I spoke to 1,800 franchisees 1,200 franchisees at Taco Bell. I don't think I have to explain what Taco Bell does.
Right.
What was fascinating to me is that both of these companies, which couldn't possibly be more different, actually have very similar challenges. And this is what I've realized is every industry has the same challenges, which is we can't compete on price because competing on price is a race to the bottom. Sure, Taco Bell can have a value menu, but it cannot be just the cheapest food out there. Nobody wants the cheapest food out there, right? Plus, someone else will come up with cheaper food. And then we just, at some point, we're giving the stuff away for free. It's not a sustainable business model.
And it's probably a terrible experience. I mean, it's not, not where the opportunity is.
And also, we can't compete on product because almost any product can be copied. And most industries have become commoditized, even industries that were once disruptors. So think about what Uber did to the taxi industry. That was the disruption. But then think about what Lyft did to Uber. And now tell me, when you get in a car at the airport, which one are you in? They're basically the same. In fact, oftentimes you're in both because the driver works for both companies. So here you have, I think Uber was one of the most innovative companies of our lifetime. And yet today it is very difficult to differentiate their product. And so likewise with Taco Bell, there's a lot of people that sell tacos, right? And even in the fluid power industry, there's a lot of competition for this stuff. So is my pipeline really better than my competitors? No, it's pretty much the same, right? And so if we can't compete on price and we can't compete on product, then the only thing left is to compete on experience. And the good thing is that anyone can compete on experience, and because each experience is unique, it can be a differentiator. So you are not the only person out there running a company that provides virtual assistants for other companies. There's many companies that do that, but you have focused on the experience of working with you and making that a differentiator. And part of that experience is that you have a knack for finding better talent, but you also have a knack for providing an experience for that talent, so they want to keep working for you and therefore for me, right? And so you may not even know it, but you're competing on experience as well, because so am I. There's 1,000 speakers that you can hire for your next event, but none of them are going to be the experience maker. None of them are going to be Dan Gingiss, and I'm going to make darn sure that I am providing a remarkable experience for my client. And as I like to tell my clients, I provide a remarkable experience for your audience while teaching them how to do the same for their customer.
That's amazing.
So you can take any industry, I believe. I haven't found one yet where customer experience doesn't matter.
Yeah, and this might surprise you, but the reason why I got into the industry I did was at first because I had a bad experience. I didn't have the best experience finding the right person, right? But the fundamental opportunity was excellent in the sense that once I found that person, it was an amazing experience. But what I realized was that wasn't the experience that was the most important. It was actually the experience that the talent was having. See, the talent was having a very bad experience because they were being commoditized as people. And that's when our business really started changing, because we actually went from a staffing company to a talent agency. And that changed everything, because now you're focusing on the right experiences. And it made actually the client experience way better. And we were able to do so much more. And there's of course, there's strategy to this and a whole bunch of other things, but like the experience is the thing, especially in the business that we're in. So I am, go ahead.
No, I was just to say, you also understand that when your talent is happy, your clients are going to be happy. And so in a corporate world, we would say, happy employees equal happy customers. And so we do have to, this focus on the employee experience is just as critical as the customer experience. What I love about it is you can take the same Wiser methodology and apply it directly to employees, and it's going to work there as well. And you should, because you can't expect employees to provide a great experience if they don't know what one looks like.
That's exactly right. Or if they're treated poorly and then you say, but treat these other people differently.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it all starts at home, basically.
You got it, man. That's why you're so good at what you do.
Shucks, Dan. No, it's so, I mean, I'm all in. I'm all in on customer experience and the experience we give people. I mean, I think there are certain people who are just wired for it. You're clearly one of them. I'm curious, are there personality tests or things that you would recommend to C-level people to use to find those customer-centric people that are just naturally doing it? Or is this one of those things where you're not born, you're made, or it could be either way? Can you train someone to be customer focused?
So that's a great question. And it's, I think, a complicated answer. Because I believe that every employee should have customer experience as part of their job, whether it's in their title or their job description or not, I'd like to believe that anybody can do it. And so in that sense, there is some training. Sometimes that training is as simple as, before we make any business decision, let's just ask ourselves, what's the impact on the customer? And if the impact is negative, can we go back and maybe tweak that business decision a little bit? Because look, I understand the point of being in business is to make money. And so we might be doing something that is going to help us make more money. But if we're doing it on the backs of our customers, then long-term, we're going to lose people. Whereas if we're doing something that also provides value to the customers, or at least doesn't hurt the customer, we're going to keep people. And so I do think you can train people to that. In terms of the sort of front end people who are actually in front of customers, you do sort of have to look for some ability to communicate, to want to be helpful, to be able to show empathy. These types of things are really important. Yeah. And I do think some of that is not trainable. I don't know that you can teach someone to be empathetic. I think that is something that you kind of either have or you don't. Maybe you can teach someone to summon their empathy a little bit better, but I'm not sure that you can just teach someone to do that. But I do think you can teach them to think in a customer-centric way.
So Dan, the Experience Maker was so good. Circa 2022, you've learned and grown, and you better know your audience. I understand you have another book on the horizon.
I do. I have a second edition of the Experience Maker that is coming out at the end of April, and we have slightly reframed it. It is now titled Becoming the Experience Maker, turning everyday interactions into remarkable moments. And it is a new and expanded edition of the book. It has additional stories and additional chapters. The last book ended with COVID because I wrote it during COVID. And it always bothered me because it sort of felt like it was dating it a little bit. And so we got rid of the COVID chapter. We added a chapter on crises in general and how to deal with crises from an experience perspective. We added a chapter on AI, which of course will probably be out of date in 5 minutes, but I tried to keep it really broad about sort of how to think about AI from an experience perspective. So a lot more than the first book, brand new, fresh cover, and really excited about it. And I'm hoping that this will, keep the momentum in my keynote and my business going for a little bit longer while I work on what will officially be book number 3, which I can't really spill the beans right now, but is going to be a little bit of a shift in topic for me, more in the leadership space, which I'm very excited about.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, we look forward to seeing this. Yeah. So turning to your day-to-day life as a certified speaker professional, I was looking into the requirements for that designation. And they don't give these out. Like, this is a remarkable achievement as a speaker, because it requires you to do hundreds of it requires you to do hundreds of speeches over prolonged periods of time. You actually have to be paid to do these things. You have to have a certain quality and approval rating of all of your speeches. What's the total number of certified speakers in the United States, or in the world, really?
So it is fewer than 600 in the world are active speakers that have the designation.
Wow.
I think there's some more, maybe another, I don't know, 100 or 200 that are retired now. So, but it's fewer than 600 active speakers. So it is a small percentage, both among professional speakers and people who just call themselves speakers, right? I mean, sometimes it feels like everybody on LinkedIn now says they're a keynote speaker, whether it's what they do or not. But it is a pretty small percentage, and it is an arduous set of tests you sort of have to go through, but that's on purpose. And the idea of it is that that when meeting professionals are hiring speakers, their biggest fear is making a mistake, and hiring somebody that maybe looks good and has a cool sizzle reel, but turns out to be terrible on stage. And I think that this designation really should give them the confidence that I've done this before. I've done it many, many times, and I know how to, I know how to comport myself. I know what to do if the slides don't work, or if the mic goes out, or if I've been there. I've done it all. In fact, I just the other day, last week, I had, for the first time since I've started speaking, we were under a tornado watch. And so I was working with the meeting planners before my speech on what to do if during my speech everybody's phones started going off and we had to take action. Because what's interesting is, if that happens and I'm on stage, who do you think people are looking to lead in that moment? They're looking to the guy on stage. And so I wanted to know, like, where are the exits? Where do we need to take shelter? And we planned all of that. So I felt comfortable. It didn't happen, luckily. But, that's what a professional does, is that they know that they know about all of the possibilities. They've been through things breaking and things not working, and my slides don't work. Don't worry. I still got this. No problem. I show up with an hour keynote and you tell me I only have 45 minutes. No problem. We'll make it happen. If I show up with a 45-minute keynote, you tell me I have an hour. No problem. We'll make it happen. That's the confidence that you get with a CSP, because we know what we're doing. And like anything, Chris, there's a difference between a true professional and an amateur. And there's nothing wrong with amateurs. I was an amateur when I was speaking on behalf of Discover and Humana and McDonald's. I was a corporate guy who had a day job, and I was sort of speaking on the side. That was an amateur role that I was playing. Today I'm a professional, and there's a difference.
Awesome. Well, Dan, I really appreciate you being on Discovering the Possible. I have learned what's possible in customer experience from you. We are actively working to make this happen in our data and our sort of day-to-day lives in Kayana. I am sure there's going to be people that are going to want to talk to you. Where can people find you, Dan?
Best place is dangingiss.com. It's DANGINGISS.com. Anything and everything you need to know about me is there. But I also love connecting on LinkedIn in particular. I do also do some stuff on Instagram and YouTube. But I am not a hard guy to find. That is one of the things about this business, is you want to be findable. So if you go Google my name, you'll find 50 places you can find me.
Well, I have seen you speak, and you're electric, man.
Thank you.
You're electric. And so you can't go wrong in working with Dan. He is a fantastic speaker. He is one of very few that have been accredited to do this. He is a true professional. Thank you, Dan, for being on the show.
Before we go, though, you forgot to share with your audience perhaps my best career accomplishment, which is that I am client number one at Kayana. Yeah.
You know what? I wasn't going to say it, but Dan is client number one of Kayana, and he will forever
only
be.
Only one person can be number one.
Only one person can be number one, and Dan, you are number one, and I thank you.
And it's an honor. It's an honor. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm so proud of you and what you've accomplished with Kayana. It really is very, very impressive. And like I said at the outset, I've told you this, not when we're recording a podcast, but I love how your brain works, because every time I talk to you, I feel like I learned something new, or you give me some different way of thinking about stuff. And so it's been really fun to watch you grow this business, and you're doing an amazing job.
Oh, shucks. Dan, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being on the show, and I'll see you in the Philippines.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
Take care, Dan. Thanks.